beautiful. He really is. I want another one. Just one. Hello, isn't he gorgeous? Doesn't he look so lucky when you see his toes curving out when you stroke his feet? It's such a miracle. Oh, it's beautiful.
What did you do today?
We played blocks. We got to put the blocks in the hole, but it's broken. Couldn't fit it in the hole. What did you do?
Me, I built this really big castle, and then these monsters attacked, and I had to fight them off with my magic powers. And yeah. No. I just paid on my building blocks. But my mum said that I had to be careful because I might poke my eye out. I thought that's really dumb because you have to try really hard to poke your eye out. So I tried poking it in.
Did it work?
Nah, it just got stuck up my nose, see? What did you do?
I didn't know what.
Really?
Oh, you're so lucky. We might win that from that. What's she done? Punch cheeky.
Yeah.
She can't even talk rightly. Yeah.
Guess what I did today?
What?
Yes!
I don't know.
Number twos.
Me too. I did number one.
So, now I have to go toilet training.
Me too.
Toilet training? It's cold! No, see, it was still cold, but it wasn't scary. What happened?
Life is like a box of chocolates. There's one thing I've learned while I've been here, is you never know what you're going to get from Derek. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody this morning. Can you hear me? Okay, we'll go without. I've got scan it. Sorry about that. Scan it. Not having a good day this morning. Okay, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to everybody this morning, especially to all our visitors. Just like you to sit back and relax as we go through this morning on this seeker service is about taking risks. Everything is a risk. Okay, there are acceptable risks, there are unacceptable risks. It's all in the way you perceive that risk. I don't really want to say too much more about it, but as you go through your life, it's like Tom Hanks said in that film, life is but like a box of chocolates. Okay, you never know what you're going to get. But there's one thing you can be sure of, and that, to me, is the love of our God. Okay? So just sit back, relax, and enjoy what the guys have got for you this morning. Thank you.
Following me. So if you just follow us and move time. You only accuse the whole nation of you because you are robbing me. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have enough room for it. And I will prevent pests from devouring your crops, and the vines in your fields will not cast their fruit, says the Lord Almighty. Then all the nations will be called blessed, for yours will be a delighted land, says the Lord Almighty. You have said harsh things against me, says the Lord. Yet you have asked, what have we said against you? You have said, it is futile to serve God. What do we gain from carrying out his requirements and going about like mourners before the Lord Almighty? But now we call the arrogant blessed. Certainly the evildoers prosper, and even those who challenge God escape. Fear those who fear the Lord talked with each other, and the Lord listened and heard. A scroll of remembrance was written in his presence, concerning those who feared the Lord and honoured his name. They will be mine, says the Lord Almighty, in the day when I make up my treasured possessions. I will spare them, just as in compassion a man spares his son who serves him. And you will see the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, between those who serve God and those that do not.
G'day, Doc. I had that dream again.
The dream?
Yeah, you know. The dream about the crash. You know, the plane crash.
Crash? Plane crash?
Yeah, I have it every night.
Night?
Yeah, you know, when that white thing, when the blue thing goes down and it becomes dark.
Now I've got you. I think you've got a fear of flying.
Well,
You know, there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
well, do you know how fast high-octane fuel burns? I mean, I wouldn't want to be on top of it in a plane crash.
You know that flying is one of the most safest forms of travel.
You know, you're right, Doc. This irrational, crazy, mixed-up phobia of mine is it's just unrealistic. It's just silly. Well, I've just been beat on a chiplock.
No, thank you.
I've been beat again. They must be waiting for me. Leaving a flight, so I'll be off, Doc, and I'll see you next week.
on, man, get a move on. What?
I can't concentrate with you jabbering all the time.
Oh, come on, you girl.
Shut up.
Look, if you don't hurry up, by the time we get down, I'll be able to collect my pension.
If you don't shut up, by the time we get down, you'll be collecting ACC. Rather large, isn't it?
Don't be rude.
I think the gap is rather large.
Don't sweat it. Look, I'll let out some slack, and then all you've got to do is just traverse the gap, okay?
Shut up. It's easy for you to say you've done this climb before.
Can't believe this. This coming from the guy who didn't think twice before he took risks when we were young.
Those risks didn't have me in a position where I'm wetting my pants.
I'm glad I was leading. Look, I remember when you used to just go and do things. You didn't think anything of taking a risk.
Like what?
Oh, like that time we went swimming and you were diving off the overhang when no one else would.
Aren't you nuts? It could have been history. Were you scared?
No worries. I laugh in the face of fear. My middle name is Danger.
I thought it was a person.
Shut up.
Looking back then, my middle name should be stupid. I can't believe the risks I took back then.
Yeah, but the fact was you took them, so why can't you do this?
Well, the overhang was only 20 metres high. This is 200 metres high. I could fall and kill myself. Besides, I only did it once.
Oh, look, you took heaps of other risks. I mean, the time we went trail bike riding, remember that? Remember that coming along? Huge ditch. What do? You flew over it, man. You took that ditch.
Did you see that? Man, I just flew.
Yeah, you must flew to the bank.
Rubbish, I made it by heaps. Evil Knievel, watch out.
Who?
Shut up.
That was pretty awesome though, wasn't it?
I always remember that dumb saying you used to have.
Ah, yes. A life lived in fear was a life half lived.
So what, you're only going to live half of this part of your life?
It's different back then. You're like you're invincible when you're young. I just don't know if I can do it.
I still remember your biggest risk.
What was that?
You were 17 and the 7th form formal was coming up. And you were going to ask out Sophia Walker. I mean, you were the underdog. She was the most beautiful and popular girl in school. She had legs all the way up. And a smile that could leave you feeling giddy. She was beautiful, witty, sexy. She was the ultimate babe. You, on the other hand, hung out with the rest of us rejects. You looked so funny with your spotty complexion, your gangly frame, and your lousy fashion sense.
Thanks for the vote of confidence.
I mean, everything was against you. No one gave you the slightest chance of her even talking to you. The possibility of her going out with you was zero. Zip, zilch, nothing, nada. Hell freezing over, last man on earth situation. What were you thinking? I still remember the look on your face just after you asked her.
My jaw still hurts. I remember that day. She didn't need to say, you know, I felt so stink. She could have just said no.
Oh, stop grizzling. She married you, didn't she?
Sure did.
Now come on, let's get you across this gap. On 3, ready? 1, 2.
up on the notice board after the service, and it's the long-awaited GAP camp. Amen. GAP stands for Girls at Prayer and Play. And the camp's going to be on Friday the 19th and 20th of June. So it's a Friday evening, overnight to the Saturday, into the Saturday evening. So it's just one night away from home, and we're going to have a great time. So keep your eye out for registration forms. Also for all cell group leaders, this afternoon at 4 o'clock is leadership training. So please all be there. Next Sunday, probably all got one of these in your note sheets. Next Sunday evening, our twilight service is Where is God When It Hurts? And that's looking at recognising when people are confused, depressed or hurting. So make sure you grab a whole pile of those. There'll be extra ones out back there to give to your friends and family and bring them along. Also for parents, the sevens and unders children, we're going out to the preschool just before Gary's message. Well, taking risks. I've got a story of one of my university days. A friend and I decided we'd join the tramping club. So we went along, I think it was the second tramp we went on, out to Old-Tucky Forks. It had been from Friday night till Sunday. Of course, by Sunday the old legs were aching and the feet were aching and there were blisters. And our leader, who was a bit of a gung-ho tramper, decided that we'd pack float the last bit of the tramp, which meant getting into the river and floating on our packs. Well, I had a fear of water, but I thought, well, I was feeling pretty achy, and the thought of having to walk out the rest of it didn't seem too encouraging, so the idea of floating down on my pack sounded okay. So in we got, and hit the first bit of deep water, and I never realised how heavy tramping boots get when they fill up with water. And I thought I was a goner. Thought I was going to go down like a rock. And of course it didn't help when I wasn't the greatest swimmer. But with a bit of encouragement from my friends, we made it. But it was a pretty scary time. Afterwards, I felt really elated because I'd overcome that fear. And just for having experienced what I'd done. And if I hadn't taken that risk and stepped out, well, then I wouldn't be here, standing here today telling you that story and have experienced overcoming a fear. And I was thinking how it was much the same when I first became a Christian, how it was a risk to reach out towards God and overcome the fear of being maybe disappointed by what I found in God. But then if I hadn't taken that risk and reached out to God, then I wouldn't be standing here today either telling you that story and just how awesome God is. And just how He's helped me overcome many other fears in my life as well. So now I've got a song by our team, and it's called If You Only Believe.
children that you'd like to go now, there's something available for you, and children would like to go, something special for you. Well, we've got to give these guys a real hand this morning. Yeah. noticed those three young guys crawling around the floor? Young guys, yeah, sure. You know, risk-taking, it can make your adrenaline pump, or it can paralyse you totally with fear. It can make your adrenaline pump and you can be so excited that you can't even sleep the night before. Or it can so paralyse you with fear that you don't even know what to do. You can be confused and disoriented because of it. And every one of us has things that look risky, that look dangerous, that are things that we'd be worried about. I know one thing that happened for me when I first got married. I was a bit worried about my wife even boiling eggs. It's true. When we were engaged, she burnt them. The mother who's sitting here can vouch for it. She said to her daughter as she went out, Pauline, remember the eggs, I put them on, so you need to take them off in a couple of minutes' time. Yes, Mum. About a quarter of an hour later, we're sitting on the doorstep, looking into each other's eyes. My wife didn't know how to cook eggs, of course, that's probably what it was. It's a big risk. We take risks all the time. We walk across the road, we take risks. We drive a car, we take risks. We jump off bridges, we take risks. We kiss someone we think we might like and we take a terrible risk. Some of you know how terrible it's been. Times. I know my wife, when I first proposed to Pauline, she confessed to me just after I proposed to her that there's another guy. Now this is when I was sort of waiting for her to say yes, because she made me wait 2 weeks. She sort of said to me, oh, somebody else has already proposed to me a while ago, and I thought, oh. And she told me who the person was, and oh, I didn't know about that. There's a guy I was really good friends with. In fact, he ended up as best man at his wedding. And I said, well, what happened? What happened you didn't marry him? She said, I didn't like his kisses. There you go, that's what she said to me. Poor guy, I thought about it. Man, I've just taken this humongous risk. I've asked her to marry me, you know, and she's saying she didn't like his kisses. I wonder what my ones are like on the other side. Must have been risky kissing me after experiencing that. But she obviously likes it because she comes for more. You know, it doesn't matter who it is. Whatever we do in life can be a risk. For some people, there's no trouble jumping off a bridge with a bungee rope. No trouble at all. But to ask a girl out is the most traumatic thing that life could ever bring. I remember some of the nervous moments I had. First time I ever kissed Suzanne was in the bell tower in the church. We could close the trapdoor and we'd sit there, and I was wondering how I'd tell her, and I had my autograph book and I gave her this little autograph book, and she wrote in it, roses are red, violets are blue, something rather about I love you. So I took that as a good cue, and it was. She was nice. Big risk. It was worth it. So what do risks mean to people? What do they really mean? Risk can mean egg on your face, you know what I'm talking about, not literally egg on your face, but sometimes you take a risk and people go, no. I mean, I thought it was really good, you know, these two guys remembering when they were younger, and the spocky, scrawny guy, gangly guy, as he was described as being, who asked the girl, the prettiest girl in the class. All the other guys were too chicken to ask her. And so he goes up and he asks her, and she gives a good whack. I love that. The sailor, good on you. Should have done it ages ago.
I know where you live.
You know, the horrifying aspect of that story is that they got married. You know? Egg on your face. Hand on your face. Whatever it is. But you know, you can face failure or you can face success with all sorts of things. Some people are actually so full of fear that before they go down, they'll actually turn around, and I've seen them do it. Check the seat to make sure it's not going to collapse. Well, I'm not surprised with some of the nuts around here who undid some legs off a seat last night when one young lady went to sit down. That's why That's why we get these kinds of fears, and we don't want to take risks because of things that have happened in the past often. I remember years ago when I went out and played soccer and I got foot tripped and ended up in hospital, smashed up leg and operation. And a guy across the room from me in Ward 1 in Christchurch. It was a broken bones ward. And this guy had been driving his car like a bit of a lunatic and he'd smashed one leg. So in any case, he went into hospital and decided the hospital patched him all up and put a plaster on and everything, and he'd been in there a few days because of the damage that had happened to his leg. And in any case, they finally felt he's ready, so they fitted him out with some crutches, and he was hobbling out the hospital, and somebody had been washing the floor and hadn't left a sign there, and his crutches went out from under him, and he smashed the other leg. He didn't know he was taking a risk. You know, the poor guy, it was discovered he had chalky bones and he was a paraplegic because of it. It was a sad story. He took a risk. But if every one of us worried every time we walked down a hospital ward corridor that we're going to fall over and bust our legs and end up paraplegic, that would be some real trauma for us in our lives, wouldn't it? We wouldn't do anything. You know, for that same guy, there came a point where he started riding in a wheelchair and the two of us raced from one end of the corridor to the other. The Christchurch hospital corridors were the longest in New Zealand at the time. I don't know whether they still are. And I remember belting along on my crutches and him in his wheelchair, and he beat me by about that much. We crashed through doors, we did all sorts of things. But I also remember the euphoria he felt when he realised that he was in a wheelchair, had thrashed the hide off me. Well, that's the way he saw it. It was only that much. I thought he'd only just beaten me. As far as he's concerned, he'd thrashed the hide off me. He'd taken a risk. He still hadn't lost the ability to do so. Risk-taking really relates to our individual security. If we were told as children, don't do that, you might fall over, you're likely to be non-risk takers. Hey, my youngest daughter, when she was little, she climbed up the couch. I remember she could only just crawl. I remember when she climbed up this couch that we had. In fact, we've only just got rid of this couch. She climbed up this couch and she got to the top of the back, and you could see she was going to launch herself, and Pauline got, too late. She jumped. And Pauline said, why did you stop her? And I said, oh, kids have got green bones. She's not going to break anything. Well, the interesting thing is that Adele was sitting there. Adele was always the wise, cautious one, you know. She sat there and she watched. So if she could do it, so can I. Now, up till then, it was probably our concern over our first daughter that caused her not to attempt it. It caused her not to try. Okay, it's all right. Ray's just having a little trouble, and he's all right. He's got epilepsy, so you don't need to worry. So, a couple of guys, could you just go and just look after him. So risk-taking relates to your individual security. Just a couple of guys. I need a couple of people because we get too many, it's too hard for them. Okay? So taking risks simply means we are changing what has been our status quo. We're changing our norms. We're not doing what we normally do. So some people would have no trouble taking the risk of going to other people and asking them for something hard. Maybe the boss. I don't know whether you've ever been in a situation where you don't feel as if you're earning the money you should be earning for the things that you're doing. And so what often happens, the wife says to the husband, all you need, you just got to ask your boss, just ask your boss. And they say, oh, but I can't, he might fire me. Well, if we always live in the fear of being fired, we're never going to be taking any risks. Isn't that true? Amen? Hello? Hello. Yeah, you're there. Right. So are the risks we take worth taking? Are the risks that we take worth taking? I want to talk with you about this. When I was a kid, I must have been only about 9 or 10 years old. I remember my father taking us up to my uncle's place, which was in the mountains on the South Island. And he was a railway gang worker. And his children were a bit naughty. They were pretty heavy risk takers sometimes. And what happened, we got on one of those push-pull jiggers. We got onto the track. And I remember we got in this push-pull thing. And we push-pulled and we push-pulled. And we're heading down the track. And I said to them, I think it was a Sunday if I remember rightly, I said, do any trains coming down here? No trains come down here now. Tonight there's a train comes, but not now. We got a long way away, and I don't know how far away it was, but I just remember it seemed like eternity away from my uncle's house. There's a reason it seemed like eternity, because we got a long, long way away, and suddenly we heard a train coming. We started on the push-pull, and I tell you, I have never panicked so badly in my life. And so then we were push-pulling, and we weren't getting anywhere, and we could hear this train getting closer, and you could feel it through the tracks. And in the end, we got off, and I didn't know what to do. And we were absolutely desperate, and we were trying to pull this jigger off the tracks. And then we decided we'd hide, and then we decided we're trying to pull this jigger off the tracks. We're in a total state of panic. And the end of the story was that Uncle found out what we'd done. And oh boy, we were in trouble. That risk just wasn't worth the end product. I can tell you, I hurt after that. That risk just wasn't worth it. I remember another story when I was a bit older. I was about 18, 19 years old. And we actually used to love going tramping. And I went from Christchurch up to Takaka Hills. And there's a hole there. It was called the 7th deepest hole in the world. And it's called Harwood's Hole. All three of us decided that we wanted to see down this Harwood's Hole. So we had rope and things like that, and so three of us decided to climb down, and the rest of the group decided they weren't going to do it. Well, it was a pretty wise move on their part, because in those days we never had carabiners. In those days, you know, they're the clip things on the cliff face. We never had all the right gear, really, and we got sort of down, and me being stupid and crazy, I was the first one down the rope, I was at the bottom. There were two guys above me, we'd anchored to a tree. The only trouble is, we were climbing down, and suddenly there was a distinct jolt. And we stopped moving very suddenly. We stayed there. And some guys at the top yelled down to us, they said, "Hey, the trees moved." Shining, glinting in the sunlight, we suddenly became aware of something we'd seen before, but all three of us, when we talked afterwards, talked about how we felt, about the fact that there were, I think, about 4 or 5 plaques on the other side of the hole, glinting in the sunlight, in memory of others that had fallen down the hole. Suddenly those plaques had significance they hadn't held. We thought, we're all right, we won't do anything stupid. And we'd anchored to the silly tree that moved. We were the only ones with rope. I was the one with the rope at the bottom. So the only way of getting the rope up to the top became me. Because every time the other two moved, and they were almost twice my weight, because I was only a skinny little weed at the time, every time they moved, the rope moved, and there was this little sort of shaking feeling, and it was horrible. Now, we were probably, actual fact, quite safe, but we didn't feel safe, I can tell you, and I had to clamber up over the other guys with the rope, and we tied one tree to the other tree so they could get out. I tell you what, I have never, ever thought of going down Harwood's Hole again. Too risky. Harwood's Hole's too deep. Takes about 7 seconds before a rock hits the first of a series of 3 ledges. Reckless. A reckless risk. And when we have reckless risks, we're doing it in disregard of our own safety and disregard of the fact that we could be doing something foolish. Did you notice in the drama with the guy I talked about before? He got the slap in the face. I wonder if he considered the risk beforehand. I wonder if he thought about that. But sometimes we think of the risk and we think, gee, that would be a good investment. I'm willing to take the risk. I'm willing to pay the price at the end of the day. But he got a slap. I remember a risk I took years ago, but I was not totally conscious of the risk I was taking. I went out with this girl who wanted me to go to a dance with her, and I didn't normally like being invited by girls to go because it was a male's role to ask the girl. It wasn't the other way around. But the 7th form, which I hadn't survived to, were having a ball. And I got asked to be her partner because they didn't have enough guys to go around all the girls, because our girls now still were brighter than the boys generally. So most of us boys didn't last very long. So I went along with this girl. I went along to the dance, and unbeknown to us all, the 7th form had put a bottle of vodka in the punch, non-alcoholic punch. Unbeknown to them, the 6th form had also put a bottle of vodka in the punch. And unbeknown to both of them and all of us, the music teacher was a bit of a ratbag, and he had done the same. I drank about 30 glasses of this. They weren't big glasses, but when I dropped this girl off at home, I got to her front gate, and I sort of was a bit afraid of parents in those days. It was too risky to go near parents with a girl. I remember standing there saying good night, and I kissed her. And I regretted that risk so badly, because she decided I was her boyfriend. And the alcohol had taken control. I didn't know the risk I was taking. And she pursued me like a hound dog from that day on. My mother, years later, when I was married to Pauline, told us how she used to sit in the bay windows of our house, and she could see this girl's driveway, the end of the driveway from our bay windows. And she said she'd see this girl's head peeking around the hedge, waiting for me to exit our driveway. And as I exited our driveway, she would come out, Gary, Gary! I would be blindly pretending I couldn't hear. I'd be walking like this. I could do that down to the end of Hunay Road fast as some people could run and make it look like I wasn't running. Some risks we take, we just don't know we're taking. But there's some positive risks we take. You know, some of the ones I took, I went skiing and I never broke a leg. Surprising, but I didn't. I hit some ice patches, I flew through the air, and I thought I busted everything in my body, but I hadn't. I tried riding motorbikes and didn't manage to prang any of those. I always remember a friend of mine who's actually a pastor in an Anglican church near here nowadays, getting on a 650 Bonneville motorcycle, very powerful bike in those days. I mean, that was a big bike, you know. In the sand dunes, I'd never seen a guy do that before. He wrapped the throttle, he dropped the clutch, and I don't know whether you know anything about motorbikes, but you do that and you head into sand dunes, you're asking trouble. He flew. He did, he flew. And he pranged the bike. It was his mate's bike. No, but I took the risk and it didn't happen. I went tramping like Denise. The same thing. I went tramping. We did some crazy things. We climbed up waterfalls. I never floated down a river with a pack. That's madness. You know, that's madness. Total. I mean, she's crazy. I married Pauline. That was a risk. Hey, hold it. Backstage. But after we got married, she's the one that realised she'd been totally mad. Her risk was high. I took the risk and had some kids. Well, they ended up pretty good, really. We're so pleased about our ones. We've taken another one into our family, and boy, that was a risk. The way she sat around, you know. I remember when I was younger, I was a fitter turner, and most fitters and turners wouldn't have expected a major significant job until you're about 46, which is next year for me. I was only 22. And I applied for this job. And in the end, I got to the point where I felt God had spoken to me. A very profound sort of thing happened. 2 guest preachers came to our church and got up in front of the church and said, God has shown you what to do, go and do it. Now, both of them didn't even know each other, these guys. And they said the same thing. And the day before, I'd been reading a newspaper and this advert had jumped out of the page. I don't know whether you've had those kinds of experiences. This advert had jumped out of the page. Fitter in charge of a workshop. 53 men you'll be responsible for, and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I jumped out and I thought, oh no, I couldn't do that till I'm about 46. That's the normal expected thing in my trade. And so I wasn't going to. But then this message came. So do you know what I did? I took the risk because I thought, here's the way our logic sometimes works. I thought, maybe God is trying to humble me. I'll get turned down. I'm going to go and apply for this job and he wants to humble me. So I went and I applied for the job. I told the guy I was a Christian. I told the guy what I expected. I didn't have anything to lose because God was about to humble me. Instead, he gave me the job. You know, if I'd really thought that I was just taking a risk and I wasn't going to be humbled, I wouldn't have even bothered to apply. It would have been beyond my expectations. And we mostly think of risk as a negative thing, but the only reason being is because some of the risks we take no longer seem like they were anymore a risk. So we don't always know we've taken a risk. You know, I always think of some of the serious things we've seen happen in New Zealand over the last few years. The people who walked onto the Conservation Department platform down the South Island didn't know they were taking a risk. The guy who was sitting in the United Airlines 747 when the door blew out, well, he might have known he's taking a risk flying, but I doubt whether he knew that he's taking a risk the door might fall out. I remember one of my closest friends, he's got terrible troubles with his feet because he went driving and a drunk driver hit him head on. And has left him with permanent injury. And I guess he didn't really know that he was taking a risk that day. There's another friend of mine knows a little slightly humorous one. He was at this conference with a whole lot of people and they had all these glass doors around this conference centre. They thought it was a marvellous conference centre. And somebody called out, so he leaps out of his seat. He didn't know leaping out of his seat and running to respond to this particular call was going to be a risk. He comes running around and goes, boom! Straight to a glass door he didn't see. Now we're taking risks all the time and we don't know that it's happening. As I said, Pauline took a really big one when she married me, but there's other risks we take. Adele has a thing that she finds really hard. She hates lifts. Now, I sat down and thought about this, I pondered this. She gets in the lift and she grabs Dad. So I love to ride lifts with my daughter because she likes to grab him. You know? But you know what I think it is? She knows how they work and she knows only a little wee piece of wire hanging us up there. Most other people get in there, they just see the lift, they don't see the small wire that's holding you up. I mean, it is. In proportion to the size of the lift, which is about this kind of size, the piece of wire that's holding you up is about that diameter.
Thanks, Gary.
So, those who work on the 17th floor in town, you're going to have to climb the stairs now, aren't you? See, the more you know, often the less you feel safe, isn't it true? The more you know, the often less you feel safe. How many of you saw the other night the Who Dares Win program? The girl that got offered $500. I have seen some of those Who Dares Wins, and I think some of them I would think very seriously about doing. But this one, they went around asking people if they would do something for $500. And this girl said yes. And I couldn't believe for a start that it was a girl that said yes. Because I'm male chauvinist pig sometimes. No, not really. I'm only kidding. But it's this girl, this really pretty girl, said yes. And what they got her to do is to stand on polystyrene framework with a polystyrene top, and she would have been standing about this high above the ground, maybe a little bit more, probably half a metre higher than I can reach. Was it 3 metres short? Fancy, sorry. And she had to stand there, and they drove this car at full tilt towards her, and it hit the polystyrene while she was standing on it, and they told her all she had to do was drop to the ground. And I tell you what, I think I would have been wetting my pants if that was happening to me. I mean, these guys kidded about it before, but can you imagine it? She held a nerve. If she had jumped too early or tried to take control, but she was really good. She stood there, she waited, the car hit the polystyrene, went blading through, and she dropped to the ground and rolled safely. She got $500. I think she was mad. I think she was really crazy. But she did it, and somebody had worked out it was possible. What if a gust of wind had hit her right at that point? That was my thought. Polystyrene is so light, a gust of wind on a 3-metre stand, woof, over she'd go. That was the way I felt. But maybe it wasn't quite that dangerous. You know, when you walk down the street here, you're walking in danger, especially in Porirua. Not because of the people, but because under you there's a whole lot of drains that could collapse. All down the streets. So we walk down the streets, just think about that. You saw Manu said he had fallen down the loo. You may land on top of him. Now, anything can happen. Anything's a possibility. But I reckon life comes down, if you really nail it, to 2 of the biggest risks that the world could ever experience. Every one of us faces these 2 risks. Every one of us can have a choice about them, whether we take them or not. And the funny thing is that people take the worst one so often. Now, what are the risks I'm talking about? Well, there are 2 ultimate risks. One is playing with hell, and the other is entering heaven. Most people play with hell. I mean, I've done it. We've all probably done it. We all probably do at times. But we theorise like this. We say, well, God is a loving God. So I won't do what he says he wants me to do. I'll just live. And I know that when I die, the risk I take is that he will say, nah, it's all right. Don't worry. I'll modify you now. You can be part of my kingdom. You can be part of my heaven. And I take the risk that 2 things in terms of this risk. One is that hell doesn't exist, because that's a theory that some people have come with. And the second thing is that God wouldn't dare put me in this hell. I mean, if he tried doing that, I'd say, God, that's not fair. That's probably the most popular risk that people take, and most people don't even realise that they're taking that risk. I wouldn't want to play with it. You know what it comes down to? If you want to know it, it comes down to saying, God lies. It's accusing God of lying, because he said, if you don't follow me, then you go to hell. You know the passage that Rosella read out today? It talked about, in one translation, this translation she read, it says, test me. Find out if I keep true to my word. Another translation uses a word that says, prove me. Prove me. Try me out. Just try me and see if I'm going to do good for you. It's a risk. But I don't think it's a bad risk to prove him, you see, because the second risk is to actually prove him. The second risk is to say, hey God, I'm going to do it your way. That might mean, the risk might mean that some of my friends might reject me or might not cope. I remember Johanna when she was younger, she in particular is quite aware of what other people think. And she went to Queen Margaret College, and of course the impression that a lot of people get is they're a bunch of little snookies. Some of them are. And Johanna was a little bit worried about what they were going to do if she told them she was a Christian. And I said to her, if you don't tell them, it'll be worse. See, if you're willing to be a person who's going to follow God, people in there will respect you. They might try teasing you. But when you're there, when they're going through the rough spots, and you're really their friend, and you've got God on your side, then it's going to change things. We've got a friend who Pauline and I are very good friends with. We've built the friendship over years because we like these people. We love people mostly in any case, but these particular people, they follow Sai Barbarism. It's a teaching which is a strange teaching. You know, an interesting thing happens whenever they get seriously sick. They've tried their Sai Baba thing out and it's never worked for them. They always come to our door and say, would you guys pray for me? They take a risk. At the end of the day, every time they've asked us to do it, God has proven himself. Because he loves to do that for us. And I want to invite you this morning to take a risk with God. He's worth taking a risk with. I know, because I've made that journey. I didn't come from a Christian home or background or family. I came from a family that was very, very anti-Christian. They no longer are, but they were. To the point where I got told to go when I became a Christian. And things were pretty rough. Physically violent. Things like that. I won't say I handled things all that wisely because I didn't. But now, I can say God has proven himself in my life and my family respect that. They may not want it yet. See, the crazy thing is that they think I'm the one taking the risk. But I don't know about you, but if the risk was the difference between jumping into a pond of water or a pond of boiling oil, I know which one I'd die for. And if I can use that to sort of state, you know, God's kingdom is like the pond of water. There's a safety there. He's given us the ability to float on earth. Float in life. He's told us he'll be there to catch us and he won't leave us, but he's told us if we take the choice, the other ultimate risk, to play with hell, that he can't be there to catch us because it's our decision whether we want him to or not. It's not his. It's not a case of us getting to eternity and saying to God, well, God, you're a loving God. And God will say, but you didn't choose me. It was your choice. And you needed to take the risk. And some Christians have taken the risk, have died for it. Martin Luther King got up and says, I have a dream, and he preached his famous message amongst others. But he quietly said to his wife, I think one day I'm going to die by an assassin's bullet. And he did. A risk he took, but you see his investment was good because he had eternity. So dying now didn't matter. Living now did. Living in the right way now. Because he knew he'd live later. So I'd invite you to pray with us this morning. And if you've never prayed before, it's just simply talking to God. We're going to talk with him in a moment, and I'd invite you to join us. And if you in some way have felt that maybe taking a risk with God is a bit different to the way maybe you thought about it before, and that you think that it might be worth taking a risk with God, hey, can I tell you that that's the best risk I've ever taken in my life? And I'd like you to join us in this prayer. And if you want to agree with it then for yourself, I want you to feel free when I say, and all the people said, everybody says amen at that point. I don't say amen to my own prayers because agreeing with myself seems silly to me. I want you to agree with it if you believe it. And even if you're a little bit shaky on your belief, I'd encourage you still to say amen and say, God told you to prove him, to give him a chance. So I'd invite you to join me right now. Now you don't need to close your eyes. If you don't want to, if you want to, you can. I'm going to close mine just to give you some privacy. God, you're bigger than we are. And you've told us what you want. You've told us you want the best for us. And we know sometimes we've been taking the wrong risks and we haven't been following your way. We've been doing our own thing in our own way, and we need to follow you. So help us, Lord. We're sorry for the times we've gone against what you've asked after all you did make us. And you did want lots for us, and you still do. And so we'd ask that you might be with us and you might live within our lives. We want to take the risk with you because we think it's a better investment. So enable us and empower us and help us to live with you. We pray in Jesus' name. And all the people said? Amen. And all the people said? Amen. Now if you said amen for the first time this morning, what I'd like you to do is to come and talk with one of us, either a friend that you've come with who knows Jesus or one of us that you've seen up here this morning. I really want to say, hey, thanks for having the courage of taking the risk to be with us this morning. That was real risky stuff you did by coming by invitation. But let's also show our team that's here appreciation for all the people.